SocialImpactCX, the podcast that helps you drive mission and make a difference with customer experience.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for the SocialImpactCX podcast. I'm John Corrigan, and I'll be your guide to how you can drive mission and achieve social impact with customer experience work. This is episode 17 of SocialImpactCX, and again, thanks for listening. In this episode, I'd like to address the why. Why do customer experience work in a nonprofit environment or social impact organization, and then also why CX in a nonprofit or social impact environment is different. And if you hang with me here and listen to the end, I'm going to be giving away a couple, 3 books for those who are willing to participate in a bit of a activity that involves tweeting or sending me an email. So more to come on that. While some of the practices and methodologies may be quite similar to the CX work you find in traditional for-profit companies, I'd suggest that when you truly understand the why it is that you're doing CX work in a social impact environment, I think once you fully appreciate the why, then you understand that some of the mechanics might be similar, but that the work itself is really quite different. This is all about working to know more to help more, gaining empathy so that you can reach more people for a greater social good. The focus on mission and impact and social good leaves your CX program or initiative with a very different agenda, especially when compared to for-profit businesses that invest in CX while focusing on continuously increasing profits and driving shareholder value, which are typically the driving forces behind most traditional CX efforts. And as someone who spent the first 20 years of my career in the profit-driven technology sector, I'd say there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're in the social impact nonprofit customer experience space, the work is different. And I think different in many ways. But before I get too far down this path, I start each episode of Social Impact CX with some gratitude, something that I'm grateful for. November is really quite an inspiring month if you take a look around at what all is going on. There's a lot to be inspired by and inspired about. November 13th is World Kindness Day, and November 15th is National Philanthropy Day, at least here in the U.S., and today, which is November 1st, as I record this episode of Social Impact CX, well, it just turns out that November 1st is the kickoff day for the annual Giving Tuesday campaign. And I'm grateful for the people that put on Giving Tuesday. I think it's fantastic. Entering its 7th year, Giving Tuesday is a global day of giving, fueled by the power of social media and collaboration. Giving Tuesday is celebrated on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving here in the U.S. And I'd just like to give a shout out. I know that we have some people from outside the U.S. that are listening to Social Impact CX. Thanks. I'm so glad that you've joined us here. Giving Tuesday is also right in the same window of time as the widely recognized shopping events such as Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Giving Tuesday kicks off the charitable season when many of us are focusing on holiday activities and end-of-year giving. Since its inaugural year in 2012, when it was founded in New York City by the 92nd Street Y and the United Nations Foundation, Giving Tuesday has become a movement that celebrates and supports giving and philanthropy. And so this year, Giving Tuesday is on Tuesday, November 27th. You can learn more by going online to givingtuesday.org, or if you want to get a feel for the preparations being made by others for Giving Tuesday here that's upcoming later this month, head to Twitter and search on the hashtag Giving Tuesday, and you'll see a truly global group of organizations and influencers in full preparation mode for Giving Tuesday 2018, all for great causes. It's truly inspiring. Last year in 2017, Giving Tuesday raised $300 million across 150 different countries, and that $300 million came from 2.5 million gifts. And so if you divide up all those 2.5 million gifts, you get to a mean online gift of about $120, which that's impressive. If you're in the nonprofit or social impact sector and you've not incorporated a Giving Tuesday idea or program or initiative into your annual plan, you should check out this very powerful movement. So while November includes Giving Tuesday and other philanthropy-oriented observances, I've been thinking about Customer Experience Day, which was observed back in October when CX Day happened. And Customer Experience Day is sponsored by the Customer Experience Professionals Association. And I think it's a great opportunity to focus on the significance of CX work and the efforts of customer experience professionals. There's a lot of great and good there. I'm a big fan of CX Day. However, one thing that occurred this year and did strike me was that I observed some people making comments that customer experience work in a nonprofit environment is typically about the same as in a for-profit environment, or it's 80 or 90% the same, or I heard a sentiment that CX work in a nonprofit organization is something that can be done once someone is done with their for-profit career and customer experience. They can then go do CX work for nonprofits. And so that leads right back up to this theme of the episode regarding Social Impact CX. Why? Why do you do customer experience work in a nonprofit or social impact environment? Let's start by pointing out some key differences here, and then really coming back again to this question of why Social Impact CX. So, and I think there are some really significant differences. I must say that after serving as Vice President of Customer Experience for a $350 million nonprofit organization, I'd have to say that I don't agree with the conjecture or the idea that CX in a nonprofit organization or a social impact organization is almost the same as in a traditional for-profit company. Yes, some methods and mechanics are similar, but mission can change almost everything, and that's a really important point. I believe that most social impact and nonprofit organizations need to also adapt CX work for a number of reasons, because CX work comes largely from the for-profit sector. And those reasons could include budget or team resources or professional staff or variances that make up an organization. You may not have a prototypical sales or product or customer service department if you're working in a nonprofit or a social impact organization. And so there's differences foundationally in the organization, and it's important to recognize that, because customer experience is a holistic activity that takes place across teams, across an organization. And so I think just from that starting point, we already have some differences that may lead us to using some very similar methodologies and practices and executing in different ways, but you start with a very different environment. I'd also suggest that given a couple significant trends that are out there in the bigger world, there's much to be considered about what's different here. First, the overall growth of the social enterprise sector is really significant. And second, the career prioritization of what I think can be characterized as a focus on social good by large numbers of millennials in the workforce. These trends or movements or shifts ranging from social enterprise to people who want social good to be part of their career, I think it's really important to recognize those, and they're having a major impact, especially on work being done in organizations that declare themselves to be social enterprises. And this is certainly relevant to the nonprofit environment as well too. And so you probably need to dig a bit deeper than a high-level characterization that, quote unquote, this is pretty much the same when you consider how you do customer experience work in these new or more nonprofit-oriented environments. And also this idea that CX in a social impact or nonprofit organization is going to be done by an experienced career professional that maybe is in an encore career. I don't think that's totally accurate either. As I've worked with a lot of nonprofit organizations that were smaller in scale than the organization I was with. It was a lot of young people, a lot of people early in their careers who were wanting to know, how do we do this so that we can understand the people we're trying to help better, so that we can be more effective in what our team is trying to accomplish. And so when applied thoughtfully within a nonprofit or social impact organization, which also I want to make the point that, social impact businesses include for-profit businesses such as benefit corporations or B Corps as they're known, and also then businesses with a substantial corporate social responsibility initiative, or bigger businesses that have an active dialogue going on within their organization and with their board of directors about doing well and doing good, a double bottom line. CX can help your team change the world. It's really quite powerful. And so adapting CX work to help more people expand the reach of vital services, achieve a greater good, drive mission attainment. That's a different lens, both on how you come to the office or log on every day, and also on our fundamental approach to how you're going to do CX work with your team. And while you may use some very similar techniques that could likely have been developed by a for-profit company pioneering CX work so that they can improve their business performance, I think that you'll find that customer experience work in a social impact or nonprofit environment will be more than 10% or 20% different than comparable work in a for-profit company. How you engage with leadership is going to be different. How you collaborate with colleagues is going to be different than in a typical for-profit environment, I believe. Your budgets and resources are going to be likely very different. And there's a good chance that your access to technology is going to be different. And I've talked here on Social Impact CX about, technology is your friend. It's not the end goal. But the smaller your budget, your mission may be huge, but you need to figure out how to be scrappy, kind of a grassroots approach to CX. And so, your mindset coming to work every day, it's going to be different. And so, yes, there are many similarities between doing customer work in for-profit versus nonprofit versus social impact companies. But, this is all about focus and perhaps that double bottom line that's being talked about, intending to do well and do good at the same time. But I'll reiterate, there are differences than in the traditional for-profit environment that really did pioneer customer experience work. And so it requires a different lens, a different approach, a different reason or motive for gaining empathy is usually at play, and so that you can then understand more. And that takes on a different context also many times in nonprofit and social impact work. And as I've said before here at Social Impact CX, the more you know, the more you can help. When your organization's mission is about helping more people rather than getting someone to execute a financial transaction, CX is very different, and I think that's an important point. When you're working to drive greater social impact for the people that will benefit from your services or other work, greater impact for beneficiaries, CX work is different. One of the most significant experiences of my career was as a CX leader for a huge nonprofit serving millions of people with a budget size running into the hundreds of millions of dollars. When I realized that the more you know about the people you're trying to serve, that you're trying to help, then customer experience concepts took on a whole different aspect. It was all about mission and focusing efforts to help people. And that included figuring out how also to help the people who are helping others. And that's an important B2B versus B2C concept there. Your work may be helping individuals directly. You may also be focused on doing something that can help people who are helping others. And it's important to understand that distinction. Of course, good financial practices that come along with good CX work are also important in a nonprofit environment. It's just that they're not the sole or primary driving force for why you're doing this. So that dimension of mission as related to CX is different, and I think it's important to call that out and recognize it. In a for-profit environment, you are typically working to drive improved financial results, revenue growth through better loyalty, enhanced margins, reducing costs or friction in the call center, which is very expensive. In a nonprofit or social impact environment, the promise of CX, as I said, is mission attainment. And, when you use the word beneficiary or member or patient or student or client in a nonprofit context, it is different. Of course, you can look at any of these audiences as a customer, and there's some organizations in the nonprofit or social impact world that do say they have active conversations about this is our customer, even though it may not be a paying customer that's transacting in a traditional sense. It's also valid, though, to recognize that this is something different in a nonprofit or social impact environment. So programmatically, some of the CX work you'll do in a nonprofit or social impact organization may very be similar to what's done in a traditional for-profit company. In fact, I've frequently pointed out here at Social Impact CX that the world of for-profit companies have blazed the trail, and there's no need to reinvent customer experience program concepts. However, what's important to understand is that there is almost always some adaptation and extra effort involved in rethinking traditional for-profit CX methods and practices for a nonprofit or social impact team. And I find that it's typically more than just a slight adjustment. There's some real work to be done there. For example, a voice of the customer program is really important, listening to people in a measured and reportable way. But in a nonprofit environment or social impact environment, I think it's really important to consider that perhaps you should be talking about how you capture the voice of the served. And so that may sound like you're just adjusting the concept, and in some ways you are. But while survey methodologies may be similar in nonprofit and for-profit environments, the questions you're asking and what you're listening for, and the work that you do to structure a listening program, including engagement with leaders and stakeholders, and then how you're going to react or implement changes based upon what you're hearing, those can really be quite fairly different than what you find in many times a for-profit environment where you have clarity on financial metrics, which it's a different set of criteria. Another example is mapping a customer journey. Almost all journey maps in for-profit scenarios include a phase for purchase, or perhaps even multiple phases for purchase, before, during, and after. When you're mapping the journey of a beneficiary or member or client or student or another key stakeholder that might not be a typical paying customer as it is, it's probably important to understand that purchase might not be a moment of truth. It might be more like decision or commitment that is much more meaningful. And there are also many other areas that require adaptation as well. So when you're doing CX work in a nonprofit or social impact organization, it's important to take these considerations in place here so that you can adjust your work accordingly. So let's come back to why. We're talking about how you take these concepts that have many times come from the for-profit world to better understand the customer, to create empathy. Why do you take customer experience concepts that originated in the world of big business to drive loyalty and make more money and beat competitors? Why would you adapt customer experience methods and practices to be used in a nonprofit or social impact organization? And as I've already said, the more you know, the more you can help. But why are you helping in the first place? This is a really great conversation to be had in nonprofit and social impact environments, because there's many reasons. But I find increasingly there's a growing dialogue in a lot of organizations and amongst a lot of leaders out there, a growing dialogue about poverty and need and despair. And believe it or not, the why of social impact gets right to addressing these pressing issues of poverty and need and despair. And the conversation is already taking place around us. Mark Benioff, the founder and CEO of cloud computing giant Salesforce, just quoted St. Francis, of all people. He quoted St. Francis during a television interview. He reminded people while he was on the air being interviewed on a news program that it is in giving that we receive. Customer experience work helps you to make sure that you can give more effectively by having more empathy and more understanding about where people need help the most, what they need the most help in. Right back to this theme of November and Thanksgiving and giving and philanthropy, I think this is a really important conversation. And it's not just big tech that's talking about alleviating poverty and need and despair. Arthur Brooks, the president of the American Enterprise Institute, and who's soon heading to Harvard's Kennedy School and Business School, is also talking about poverty. I recently had the opportunity to see Arthur Brooks speak, and he asked a group of leaders to consider their own work and purpose and to ask themselves, at the end of the day, does all of my work go back to helping people that have less power than me? Because that's the question. At the end of the day, does all of my work go back to helping people that have less power than me? Because that's the question to ask. By helping people, making that your focus, you bring a different and more meaningful context to your own work. And I think that's what a lot of the millennials are seeking here. I think it's a very relevant point. And also this is right where SocialImpactCX comes in and is focused on, because this is really the more you know, the more you can help. So why take customer experience concepts and adapt them? Because poverty is real. The needs of people without power or less power, these needs are real. Because if we're going to be successful in doing good and doing well at the same time, and that's what social enterprise is all about, then we need the same levels of insights, empathy, and better understanding that for-profit companies have been using to be better in business. If a generation of millennial workers want to make a difference by going to work every day and not just making a buck or doing something mindless for a paycheck, then we need to better understand how to take powerful CX practices and methods and then adapt and apply these ideas to creating better empathy and better insights into scenarios where poverty and need and despair are very real and impact people on a daily basis. Education, work skill, work retraining, healthcare, and many other sectors need to figure out how to take the ideas of customer experience work and adapt them to their core work. I'll tell you, if wireless phone companies and auto manufacturers can do this to sell more cars and get you to upgrade your data plan, education and healthcare and social services organizations can use the same concepts to do whatever it is that they're doing in a better, more effective, more meaningful, and more efficient manner. This is different. This is different from some of the for-profit work being done. And it will require some work to make the adjustments and adaptations, but what worthwhile work it is, and will continue to be in the field of Social Impact CX. So this has been episode 17 of Social Impact CX, the podcast. We've been talking about the why of doing customer experience work in a nonprofit or social impact environment. And I've also touched on how different CX work can be when focused on social impact. It's really not just pretty much the same thing as doing customer experience work in a traditional for-profit context. When adapted correctly, CX work can drive your organization to better achieve mission, to help more people, and to get to addressing important issues such as poverty and the very real needs we see in our society today. And if that's what you are focused on in whatever social or impact-oriented work that you might be doing with your team, then Social Impact CX is a resource that's here for you. And so I mentioned at the top of the podcast that I'm going to be giving away a couple books, but I'm asking if you'll help out and participate here just a little bit. So here in November 2018, I'm going to see if there are others who are willing to share how they can or would use customer experience concepts in nonprofit or social impact work, and offer a few incentives here in this inspiring month of November. So let me first pose a question. Here's the question that we're going to answer. How could you help more if you knew more about the people you're working to serve or that you're trying to help? Tweet your answer to Social Impact CX on Twitter or send an email to comment@SocialImpactCX. If you tweet or email your answer to how you'd help more by knowing more, I'll put your name in a drawing for one of 3 books. There is a great new book just out called Lean Impact by author Ann Mai Chang. It's all about applying lean concepts to social impact work. And then the other 2 books I'll be giving away are what I consider to be 2 CX classics. They are must-reads. Outside In by Harley Manning and Carrie Bodine, and then also The Amazon Way, which was written by John Rossman. To be included in the drawing for these books, and there will be 1 book of each, so 3 books in total, please tweet or email an answer to that question by November 30th, 2018, and then I'll draw names for the winners the first week in December of 2018. And remember that you're telling us about how you'd help more if you knew more about the people that you're working to serve. And so if you can fit that in 280 characters, go ahead and tweet and we will share that out. If you need a little more space, feel free to email us. And I'll give the email address here in just a moment once again. And so as I've said before, Social Impact CX is also intended to be an interactive forum, a place to stir conversation and answer questions, provide some context definitions, and hopefully achieve a better understanding of customer experience work. Do you have other questions or comments about how CX work is different in a nonprofit or social impact organization, or why you'd want to take CX ideas from the for-profit world and adapt them to nonprofit and social impact work? You can ask a question or make a comment at Social Impact CX a couple different ways. First, you can send an email to comment@socialimpactcx.com. You can also use those for the responses that we were just talking about to that question. And so that's comment@socialimpactcx.com. You can also find us on Twitter and post a question there. As I said, our Twitter handle is SocialImpactCX. And please follow us on Twitter to stay up to date with new podcasts and other related content. You can also find me on Twitter, John Corrigan. My handle is John F. Corrigan. Or if you're listening to this podcast via YouTube, feel free to post a question in the comment section and we'll do our best to catch you there. We'll also check that to make sure that nobody, if you do post a response to the question about how you'd help more by knowing more, we'll try and track that as well. And while you're at YouTube, please subscribe to the Social Impact CX channel. This is John Corrigan reminding you that, especially in social impact work, it's important to understand that your mission is really all about someone else's journey. And the more you know about someone's journey, the more you can help. Thanks for listening to Social Impact CX.